Okay, this site right here is the Ruffner number 3 iron ore mine remains. This was operated by, at the time it was called Sloss Iron and Steel Company, then later changed its name to Sloss Sheffield Steel and Iron. So the mine and all the workings are up here along with the ore crusher. But these are some of the foundation remains that are still left up here. This right here was a water cistern, and it held the water because everything was steam powered, and you got steam from coal, and they had a coal-fired steam plant here, and of course you need water when you're trying to produce steam. So but this is the water cistern right here, and that is the cable hoist foundation up here. And this is where the cable hoist would be for the to lower and raise the mine cars. So this mine dates back to about 1892 or so. There's a lot of sunlight, so. But this is where the big cable hoist would be. It was situated on top of a huge cylindrical drum, and it would go through a sheave pillar up there, and a guide which would take the cable, wrap it around, and then lower it into the mine, which is directly beneath me. But always amazing how in the world they got this big multi-ton cable hoist up here back in the day. So, but anyway, the rest of the mine is over here. This is just a little walkthrough of the historic Ruffner number 3 iron ore mine. Okay, so the origins of this mine date back to around 1892, and before that there was no ore mining up here. And back in the mid-1880s, Colonel James Withers Sloss, the president of Sloss Iron and Steel Company, contracted with famed geologist William Henry Ruffner of Virginia. Ruffner was busy mapping out a new rail line for the Georgia Pacific Railroad, which later came to own what is now called Sloss Sheffield Steel and Iron Company. And Sloss had him come down here on this section of the mountain, and he wanted a detailed analysis of the iron ore, whether the property was worth it to buy, how valuable it was, what were the resources, limestone and ore. So William Henry Ruffner and his aides came up here, and they camped out for a month on this mountain. They had a little they had a little mule train with them, and they camped out all along the mountain. And Ruffner was taking geological surveys. He was taking rough tests of the iron ore, and he found that there were three beds of iron ore: the Irondale, the Big Seam, and the Ida/Hickory Nut Seam. So after a month, Ruffner wrote up his detailed report, submitted it to Sloss, and he asked Ruffner, he said, well, is it worth it to you? And he said, buy the whole mountain. And that's exactly what Sloss did. He bought this entire section of Red Mountain, which is today called Ruffner Mountain in honor of William Henry Ruffner. But you know, every ravine here had mining operations, drift, open ore, slope mining. So every ravine along Ruffner tells a different story. So go down here and take a look at the ore crusher here in a minute, and there it is. And right there is the old Birmingham Mineral Railroad bed. It was built by the Louisville and Nashville Railroad around 1888, 1889. And this was what was called the Gate City branch, because it came around through what is today Gate City, came around the mountain, and it headed in a northeasterly direction all the way to Trussville. So anyway, we'll go look at the mine and everything, which is right here, and walk up here a little bit and see the remains of a lot of drift mining. Okay, so the first stages of mining up here at Ruffner started way in the back up along near the crest of the mountain in what was called open ore mining and drift mining. They were on either side of the deep ravines, and they had what was called self-acting planes, or gravity plane system, whereby no steam or electrical power needed to be used. It was all by weight. Loaded ore cars would come down the tramway rail line, and as they came down, the weight would pull up two empty cars. It was an ingenious system that Sloss had set up here for economical reasons. But all back in here are the remains of drift mines, open ore mining. Now all the mines are closed, so don't anybody get the idea that there's open mines up here and you could go run into them. So, but up there through the trees is a hoist cable guide, and it kept the cable from flopping up and down. And back beyond that is the sheave pillar. I'll go see that in a minute. But right up here and here, these were early drift mine openings that actually go inside. So these are all closed off, but they actually came out here. All this was done before they went to slope mining. So, and this is the Ruffner number 3. Wow. Slope mine here. Wow, it's really overgrown. They came up here some years back and they put those bars up. Bat preservation, plus they didn't want people going into the mine. But I walked down here, boy, it's really overgrown. But anyway, all this up here also is a result of open ore mining. You can actually see some of the ore seam there. But they constructed the slope around 1907, 1908 because they'd exhausted all their drift and open ore mining resources, so they had to go to a slope mine to keep going after the big seam. So anyway, go down there and take a look at it. And haven't been up here in a long time. Wow, it's really overgrown. But before all this was cleared out and everything, there were trees here, and you have a retaining wall, but it's a pretty neat place to visit. So, okay, so that's looking up, and this right here is a gigantic concrete retaining wall right here they had to construct for the slope, and it's a pretty steep angle. Must have been one heck of a ride for the miners going in. But this was the opening to the Ruffner number 3 slope mine. It looks like some people have been trying to get in there or something. Got a little sensor right there or something. But anyway, that's what the mine looks like right here. Now just down below where that wooden support timber is the water line. The rest of the mine is flooded. Down below, it probably went down no more than about 1,000 feet. But off to the left, there was an access that you could go into many years ago. You could go into the inner workings of the drift mines. So, but that's what Ruffner number 3 looks like today. So, and back around when you could go in it, there would be as soon as you went around, there was a deep water-filled hole, and there was another mine underneath Ruffner number 3. It was, they were working the Irondale seam. So, and all up in here, the rest of the mountain is just hollowed out underground. There remains of tramway rails, concrete supports down in there, and everything. It's pretty fascinating to explore when it was open. But anyway, that's looking up at the looking up from the slope here. Okay, now this is looking back down at the sealed up slope mine here at Ruffner number 3. But when they were pulling the mine carts out, they would come up this slope right here, and they would be switched off to another little tramway line track or rail track, and it would take it down there, and they had a giant wooden platform that actually went up over the ore crusher, and the little ore cars would be dumped into the top of the gyratory ore crusher. Of course, it would crush the ore to a smaller size and then drop it down into the rail cars. But anyway, like I said, all up in here are the remains of drift mines, open ore mines. And see the guide pillars up there, the sheave pillars should be back around the corner there. So go check that out. This is what open ore mining looks like right here when they were doing it. And that right there is the ore seam. The big seam, as they call it. And they would use drilling dynamite, and when they would blow it, it would just come off in chunks, big square chunks almost. But all this is the result of open ore mining right here. So you can see how thick the ore seam is. In some cases it was 10, 15, 20 feet even in width. So, and right here, you can't really tell, but that was a drift mine opening right there. So, and there was another one right there, and on the other side, back when you could go in there and explore that, there are the remains of intact tramway rails curving around, heading back into the mine. So, anyway, the sheave pillars right up there, we'll check that out. So, all right. Okay, this is the hoist cable guide right here. And one of the things when you were operating one of these slope mines, you had about 1 3/4 inch cable hoist. Maybe not as thick as some of the other mines, but definitely 1.5 inches or so. And when this thing was taut and moving, you needed to keep it as stable as you can. And this is why they built that. And the hoist cable would go right through there. The sheave pillar, where the hoist cable would wrap around, it would come from the hoist cable was back over there, back behind the mine entrance, was just down there. The cable would go through here, and it would wrap around the sheave pillar up there, and the hoist cable ran all the way down this way. So these people were ingenious back then. They had to use their brains, not like us today, to make all this work. But that's a good view of the hoist cable guide right there. Not sure if there's a date. You know, some of these foundations, actually, the miners or the engineers scratched in the dates of their initials to just about any concrete foundation that had been poured, be preserved in time. So right up here is the sheave pillar. These things were really constructed well because they had to hold several tons of weight. So this is the sheave pillar right here. Maybe kind of hard to see with the sunlight, but right here. And this actually had a gigantic, what's called a bull wheel. A gigantic bull wheel that was set horizontally, and the cable guy would wrap around it, and the bull wheel was set right on top. And who knows when they took this thing. The Ruffner number 3 operated up, I think, to about 1920 or 21 when Sloss decided to close it because there was a sharp downturn in steel making in the years just after World War I, when production was at its highest. So anyway, but this is the gigantic, it's probably got steel or rail, sections of rail in there for the foundation support. But this, they had to really construct a solid sheave pillar to handle all this weight. But there would have been a gigantic bull wheel laid horizontal over the spindle and kept it greased, and as the cable ran down this way. So, and all up over here, there remains drift mines, all back in here, and up here, going back this way, there'll be deep recesses in the top of the mountain where they were extracting more iron ore from open ore mining. So, you know, when this was in operation, of course, there weren't this many trees because they would use the trees for timber, for roof supports in the mines, and lumber, and to make little cross ties for the tramway rails. But there was just a sea of mines up here. And there were several hundred men, 300 or 400 men that worked up here every day. And they didn't get paid the best back then. So, okay. Okay, just thought I'd video the bottom half of the sheave pillar foundation. You see the little stacked rock retaining wall there? And this is it's out of the sunlight so I can video it a little better. But this is the sheave pillar here. And you can see that we used cement grout. They used bits and pieces of hematite, red ore, whatever that could make the foundation. And this is the bottom half of the foundation here. So you can see how sturdy the sheave pillar had to be to hold all that weight coming from that hoist cable and loaded and empty mine cars going deep down into the mine. Okay, just thought I'd move a little deeper back into the ravine, back behind the Ruffner number 3, the main workings. And these are the early workings going back to the early 1890s. And this is what they did with open ore mining right here. They were just able to come in here. It was very economical to get what they call the soft ore. And they could just get it out with picks, dynamite, drills, and dynamite. And this right here is the remains of a little tramway line right here. And they would just load the ore on. And it would just go straight all the way down to where the ore crusher is. But before they had an ore crusher, there was a big wooden loading dock, and I'll try to mention that when I go back down this way. But I just thought I'd come up and see. This was where some of the earliest mining took place at Ruffner number 3, was right here, and it's it flanks both ravines, so they had the same type of workings on each ravine. So okay, it may be a little difficult to see because of the sunlight coming in, but this right here, this deep cut right here, was a tramway line, and on either side the miners had constructed stacked walls of shale and everything for support, to make it a wall for support for the tramway line. And back 130 years ago almost, there would have been a huge drift mine entrance going in right there, and it would have gone to the southwest, and it was perfectly set up to it's just no telling how far that drift mine went, but it was perfectly set up to run horizontally and extract underground all of the iron ore from the big seam. And you can see a section of it right there, but that was a huge drift mine opening. And right here next to it, this big deep cutout right here was another tramway line. They were parallel. One was lower, one was higher above. And they were probably connected through what was called breakthroughs or upstarts for air ventilation. So these look like they're every 60 feet apart. And a lot of the drift mines up here were separated by 60 feet going up the mountain. And what they would do is drive through the mountain and actually come out into the other ravine. And men would just push these. These were so big they might have had mules pulling the little mine cars, but that's hard to say. But a lot of times the miners just pushed them. But this right here, this is the tramway line right here. It almost looks like a rail bed cut. That's basically almost what it was right here. And this was another one of the big drift lines up here. And right there, this would have been the opening. This would have been the opening right here. And they could have turned it around and they could have gone to the northeast this way if they wanted to. There's another drift mine opening up there. But I dare to say that all these mines underground, as many of them were, they were connected with one another. But you can see the big seam right there. And like I said, this is where a big drift mine opening was. And you can see remains of the stacked rock walls. Right here, you know, rocks don't stack themselves. And you can see right there remains of the stacked rock wall. And anyway, the mine carts went out this way and they went all the way down the ravine to the loading dock at the time. So it's just a little piece of history up here, mining history. Like I said, there's another one right over this rise here. But, you know, many people maybe walk back here. They may know it's a mine or not, but Sloss made excellent use of every ravine on this mountain. Every ravine on this mountain tells a different story for mining. So, and way over there, there's more remains of the open ore mining. There's huge sections cut out up under there. So, and there were drift mines. Where I was earlier, they were drift mines. They actually went through the mountain, following horizontally, you know, the ore seam, and they actually came out on the other side of this huge ridge line, or finger as it's called, and they actually had an opening on the other side with more tramway lines. So every ravine along this mountain had remnants. You can see it today, remnants of mining. So anyway, we'll make our way back down to the ore crusher and where the Birmingham Mineral Railroad was, the spur line. And we'll try to find that powder house again before ending a little Ruffner number 3 mine hike, if you want to say. So, all right. Okay, so here we are at the ore crusher remains here of Ruffner number 3. And of course the guts and everything were long since taken out or salvaged, or, you know, scrap metal thieves came up here decades ago and got it, but most likely they took the guts out of it, I don't know, used it for something else. But the top of it would have been a little bit higher. And there was, back in the day, they constructed this around 1908 or so, there was a huge wooden platform here. And the mine carts would come all the way on this huge wooden platform, and the mine carts would be emptied over probably a self-acting tipple that just dumped the mine car over. The contents of the ore, huge pieces of ore, would go through the ore crusher, and it would crush it. And there was a chute system down here and you would have a waiting rail car of the Birmingham Mineral Railroad, open rail car. So this was a single, I think it was single, but back in here they had twin sets, dual sets of rails where they would have empty or rail cars stacked up in here. So when one was full, they'd pull another one down. But anyway, I think, and not sure if this mine stayed in operation until 1920, 21. So I'm not sure if they converted it to full electricity or if it just stayed on steam power. But anyway, you had to have a lot of electricity to power this thing. And I think this is a Gates or McCrawley. Let me see. Allison Chalmers right there. If I can. Allison Chalmers. They were huge into making stuff like this out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So this had to be ordered by Sloss. It had to actually be railed on an open rail car all the way from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And how in the world they got this up here through a heavy-duty block and tackle system to get this set up like this. So, but the power plant to operate this was probably somewhere just right back down in here. They had a lot of buildings, carpenter buildings, blacksmith shops, whatnot, other buildings. And the rail line curves off to the northeast around there. So, but anyway, all this, there's little concrete pillars right there that supported the huge wooden platform here. So, walk down the, at least they got steps here. You don't have to slide on your butt, man, coming down here. So, okay, well, like I said, the sun's out, so it may not get a good view, but this is the bottom portion of the ore crusher and the foundation here. And they made it to last, because this is basically about 115 years old, maybe. But anyway, this is the rail line here. And it went all the way back into that ravine, and that's where they stacked up the empty rail cars, open rail cars. So it could be that you had twin rails right here, which would make sense. But there would be a chute system. Once the ore was crushed, it would come out on a chute system. It would just fill up the rail car, and this would be taken to one of Sloss's two furnaces, the North City furnace or the furnace downtown that's now a historic landmark on 1st Avenue North. But anyway, can't really see too good with the sun right there. But anyway, the rail bed went out this way, curved around to the northeast, and met up with Birmingham Mineral Railroad's Gate City branch. And like I said, none of this would happen, none of this, without the railroads. And Louisville and Nashville decided around 1888, I think, they constructed a whole line that ran along south side of Ruffner, and it crisscrossed over deep ravines through natural gaps and made its way all the way out to Trussville, where they were constructing a new blast furnace. But a lot of iron ore mines along the way. But anyway, this is the ore crusher remains, and this is what most people, you know, when they come up here, follow the trails from up here, they come down here and they get to see the ore crusher. So anyway, it's a really nice piece of mining history for Birmingham. So, okay, the Ruffner number 3 mine, we're basically on the lower end of what's called a finger. And the Ruffner number 3 mine is back to the southwest, dropped down into that deep ravine. But this, surprised I was able to find it after all these years, is the remains of the powder house to Ruffner number 3. And this is where they kept the dynamite, the gelatin, stuff like that. They always constructed the powder houses out and away from the mines in case there was an explosion. the blast would take it this way, up, and this way. And they didn't want this anywhere near an active mine for obvious reasons. But this is all that remains of the powder house where they stored the dynamite. Kind of still looks the same, but they had a concrete wall, and they used stones for the base. And I've always been surprised by this hoist cable. And anyway, talking about hoist cables, that's the size of the hoist cable that would pull up the mine cars out of Ruffner number 3 right there. What it's doing here, I have no idea. But anyway, this is it. It was just a little building. It was secure, and I think there's some vent pipes, if I remember right, because they had to let the dynamite breathe. So this is all that remains. And there's a little the remains of a little wagon car trail going all the way down the mountain. You'll never find this in the summer months. It's too overgrown, too many snakes around here. So, but anyway, that's the base of it there. And go around here to the other side. If I don't fall. There we go. And that's a good side view right there of the remains. And there's one of the little vent pipes right there. And most powder houses had they had a little vent pipe, and that would just allow the air to come in. Try to keep the dynamite cool, if you want to say. But anyway, this was probably built turn of the last century. It's just hard to say how old this is, but probably goes back to about 1900 easy. So and anyway, that's the back side of it. So all right. And there's another little vent pipe right there. So, okay, well, this will kind of conclude the little Ruffner number 3 mine hike. And if you were so inclined, if you kept following this down this ravine to the other side, all the old drifts, they're sealed up and everything, but this is where the drifts would have ended up. They would have opened up out over here. They would have gone straight under this big finger right here, gone out to the other side, and you know, they're all sealed and everything, but it's a neat little hike in the woods. So, okay, well, that'll do it. It's a good day to be out in the woods. All right, and, that'll conclude the little mine hike, I guess, of Ruffner number 3. Nice to come see all this again.